The vast station of the Theran Alliance floated in the darkness of space like a shining crown. From a distance it looked calm and peaceful, but inside it was filled with voices, arguments, and politics. Hundreds of species had gathered there, each one proud of its own power and history. Among them, humanity was still new, still seen as small, still treated as weak. Ambassador Marcus Hale looked through the shuttle window as the station grew larger. His reflection stared back at him, a face lined with years of travel and long work, eyes that carried both tiredness and quiet fire. He knew this was no ordinary mission. If he failed here, human colonies near the border might be destroyed, and humanity itself might be seen as nothing more than prey for stronger civilizations. The shuttle docked with a quiet thud. Guards of the station moved in, tall alien beings with silver armor and insect-like limbs. Their eyes studied Marcus with something between curiosity and mockery. To them, he was just another soft-skinned creature trying to survive in a galaxy, ruled by strength. "Human," one of the guards clicked in a cold voice. "You may enter. Do not slow the council." Marcus gave a polite nod. "I will not." He stepped out, wearing his dark diplomat's coat, carrying no weapon, only a folder with documents and the small translator pinned near his collar. His steps echoed as he walked through the long corridor toward the council chamber. The chamber itself was immense. It was built like a circle, with tiers rising high, each filled with alien delegates. Some had wings folded at their backs. Some had thick scales that reflected the lights. Some had long arms with too many joints. Each species had its own pride, its own history, its own belief that it was superior. At the very center of the chamber stood a round platform. That was where Marcus would speak. Whispers filled the air as he entered. "That is the human. They are small. Soft blood, soft bones. They will not last long." Marcus heard it all. He had heard worse before. Humanity was the newcomer, the child of the stars, barely a century into space travel. Compared to empires that had lived among the stars for thousands of years, humans were seen as fragile. But Marcus carried something no alien had: human stubbornness. The council leader, a tall being called Speaker Valar, raised one of his 6 arms. His skin glowed faintly, as if light ran under it. His voice carried easily through the chamber. "Delegates of the Alliance, today we gather to hear from the humans. Their colonies touch the border of the Craxus Dominion. A conflict has begun. The humans claim they were attacked. The Craxus claim the humans trespassed. We will hear the human side before judgment is given." Marcus stepped onto the central platform. He stood straight, ignoring the weight of thousands of alien eyes. His voice was steady. "Honored Council, I am Ambassador Marcus Hale of Earth. I come not with weapons, not with anger, but with truth. Our colony of New Carthage was attacked without warning. Homes were burned, families were displaced. We seek peace, not war, but we will not accept destruction of innocent lives." The chamber shifted with sound. Some delegates murmured in sympathy. Others laughed softly, as if peace was nothing more than a child's dream. From one side of the chamber, a heavy voice cut through. It came from the Craxus Dominion's representative. The Craxus were huge reptilian warriors, known for their sharp claws and brutal culture. Their ambassador, General Vorkath, rose with a sneer. "Lies," he growled. "The humans are trespassers. They spread like pests, taking worlds that are not theirs. The Dominion only defends what belongs to it." Marcus met the reptilian's eyes. "If you believe defense is burning villages, then perhaps your idea of peace is different from ours." Laughter erupted among some of the alien tiers. A few found courage in Marcus's sharp reply. Others shook their heads, certain the human was sealing his own doom by speaking so boldly. The speaker raised his arms again. "Enough. Both sides will present evidence. The council will decide." Documents and recordings were displayed on the giant screens above. Marcus showed the attacks, the burning settlements, the families fleeing. The Craxus showed maps and old claims of territory, insisting the humans had no right to settle there. Hours passed. Debate grew louder, sharper. During breaks, Marcus stood alone in the resting chamber. No allies approached him, no delegates offered comfort. Humans had no strong friends here, only distant observers. He poured water into a small cup, staring at his shaking hand. He was not afraid of words, but he knew the Craxus would not let this end with just words. They wanted to prove strength, and for them, strength often meant violence. When he returned to the chamber, the tone had grown darker. The Craxus whispered with other warrior species. Their eyes followed Marcus wherever he walked. Marcus kept his calm. Every step he took was a reminder to himself. He carried not only his own life, but the hope of billions back on Earth and in the colonies. He could not show fear. The session ended for the day. As he left the chamber, he overheard two delegates speaking in their own tongue, not knowing the human translator could catch their words. Strange species. They bleed easily. They should not walk among us. Perhaps not, but I saw his eyes. There is fire in them. Marcus walked on, silent, carrying those words with him. The next morning, the second session began. The council hall was filled once more. The speaker called for final arguments. The Craxus ambassador gave a long speech about strength and the right of power. Then it was Marcus's turn again. He stepped forward, tired but unshaken. His voice was quiet at first, then stronger. Humans may be new to these stars. We may not have fleets as large as yours, or weapons as sharp as yours. But we believe something that matters more than conquest. We believe every person, no matter what world they live on, deserves a chance to live in peace. If you call that weakness, then I will stand proudly as weak. Because weakness, in your eyes, is what gives us strength to rise again and again. The words spread through the chamber. Some aliens shifted uneasily, some looked thoughtful, others angry. The Craxus ambassador's claws scraped against the floor in rage. The speaker spoke, his glowing skin flickering. The council will now deliberate. Until then, all parties are dismissed. Marcus bowed slightly, then stepped away. As he left the chamber once more, he felt a weight settle in his chest. He knew the Craxus would not allow him to walk away freely. They wanted more than words. They wanted to crush the human spirit. He did not yet know how far they would go. The night on the Theran Alliance station was silent in some corners, but tension lingered in every corridor. Ambassador Marcus Hale could feel it like a low vibration beneath his skin. The council chamber was empty now, but the whispers of discontent, suspicion, and plotting still hung in the air. He had survived the first day with words alone, but he knew the Craxus Dominion did not forgive easily. Marcus returned to his assigned quarters, a small room that overlooked the endless void of space. The stars shimmered beyond the reinforced glass walls, distant and calm, mocking the chaos that brewed inside the station. He removed his coat, loosened his tie, and poured a glass of water. For a moment, he allowed himself a breath, trying to shake off the exhaustion of the day. Then a message blinked on his console. It was from the Craxus representative, General Vorkath. Private discussion. No guards. Come alone. If you refuse, your human pride will be seen as weakness. Marcus's heart beat faster, but not with fear. He knew this was a trap, yet diplomacy required courage, and he had promised his people he would do everything possible to avoid bloodshed. He paused for a moment, then activated the security override, ensuring that the cameras could not watch him enter. The corridor to the private chamber was quiet, almost too quiet. Marcus's steps echoed softly, but the sound seemed to be swallowed by the high walls. As he approached the door, the Craxus voice hissed through a speaker. Human, enter. Your fate is sealed if you hesitate. Marcus opened the door slowly and stepped inside. The room was small, dimly lit, with metallic walls that reflected the aliens' sharp green scales. General Vorkath stood in the center, towering over the table like a predator awaiting prey. Sit, the Craxus demanded. Marcus ignored the command. Vorkath's eyes narrowed. Bold for one who is weak. Marcus's voice was calm, even though he could feel the tension building in his muscles. I am here to discuss the peace of our colonies. That is why I came. The Craxus smiled thinly, revealing sharp teeth. Peace is a human word. Power is universal. Let us see how much strength your words carry. Before Marcus could react, a hidden panel in the wall opened, and 7 energy bolts shot out in rapid sequence. He felt them hit his chest and stomach, each one burning with a force that should have ended him instantly. The air seemed to explode around him. Pain like fire tore through his body. But Marcus did not collapse. He staggered, gripping the edge of the table for support. His mind raced, not with panic, but with calculation. Humans were fragile compared to some species, but they had a secret weapon: endurance. Pain could break the body, but determination could break limits. Vorkath took a step closer, claws scraping against the floor. Fall, human. Accept your place. Marcus's eyes were wide with pain, but also fire. He took a trembling breath and straightened, blood soaking through his coat. I do not fall, he said quietly. I stand for my people. The Craxus stepped back in disbelief. No human had ever survived even 1 energy bolt at this range. 7? Impossible. In that instant, the chamber door sealed automatically, trapping Marcus inside. Vorkath expected him to collapse, to be finished. But Marcus had something stronger than the Craxus could understand: human will. He forced himself to focus, feeling his heart hammer in his chest. He reached beneath his coat and touched the small, concealed medical nanofiber mesh embedded in his body. It was crude by alien standards, but enough to stabilize his breathing, slow the bleeding, and keep him conscious. Each movement sent pain, shooting through him, but he ignored it. The Craxus growled, moving closer. You cannot survive this. Every human dies. Marcus's hands shook as he reached for the door controls. The security panel was locked by Vorkath's authority, but humans were stubborn. He gritted his teeth and yanked at the handle with everything he had. Pain lanced through his arms and back. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. And then, with a sound like metal tearing, the door gave way. Marcus ripped it open with bare hands, staggering forward. His coat was shredded, his skin burned from the energy strikes, but he had done it. He stood in the doorway, trembling but alive, a living warning to all who thought humans were weak. The Craxus froze, jaws dropping. Other species in the corridor turned, shocked by the sight of the wounded human ambassador who had torn open a reinforced door alone. Whispers spread instantly. Is that human? 7 shots? And he is still standing? This cannot be natural. Marcus took a moment to steady himself, then stepped into the corridor. Pain lanced with every step, but he did not slow. Every movement was a message. Humans would not bow, humans would not die quietly. He called for station guards, but the aliens were hesitant. Many species had seen humans die easily under similar wounds. Now they hesitated, uncertain what to do. Marcus raised a hand, his voice weak but commanding. I need medical aid now, but leave the Craxus to the council. We will settle this properly. I will not kill them here, though I could. The guard captain, a blue-skinned alien with wide eyes, approached cautiously. Ambassador, you should not. You could be dead. Marcus shook his head slightly. I am not dead. I am human, and that is more dangerous than you realize. Word of the assassination attempt spread through the station like fire in dry grass. Aliens whispered in corridors, many shocked that the human had survived. Some were fearful, others intrigued. The story of Marcus Hale, shot 7 times and still standing, began to circulate in hushed tones. In his quarters, Marcus lay on the medical table, monitors hovering over him, checking his vitals. Pain radiated from his chest, his arms, his back, but he did not close his eyes. His mind raced ahead to the council chamber, to the negotiations that still had to happen. Humanity's reputation, fragile as it was, depended on him. He thought of Earth, of New Carthage, of the colonies that looked to humanity for protection. They would hear about this. They would know that humans could endure the impossible, and that knowledge gave him strength, even in the fire of pain. The Craxus Dominion, meanwhile, convened in their own chamber. General Vorkath was furious. "The human should be dead," he growled. "It is not possible. Our energy strikes, 7 in succession, should have ended him. Yet he lives. How?" His advisors were uneasy. "Perhaps humans are different. Perhaps they have resilience beyond what we imagined." Vorkath's claws clenched. "Then we will show them the true price of crossing us. They will regret this day. Mark my words." But doubt had entered the Craxus mind. For the first time he realized that humans were not just fragile creatures to crush easily. They were unpredictable, dangerous in ways the Craxus had never faced. The next morning, Marcus returned to the council chamber. Every step was painful, each movement a struggle. The council noticed immediately. Some species whispered in awe. The Craxus ambassador tried to mask his fear, but his claws twitched nervously. Marcus stood in the center of the chamber once more. He raised his voice not in threat but in defiance. "I was attacked yesterday, 7 times by one of your delegates. I am still standing. This is not because of my strength alone. This is because humans refuse to bow, refuse to give up, refuse to surrender even when the odds are against us. You see only fragility in us, you see weakness, but we endure. And through that endurance we rise." The room was silent. Even the speaker hesitated, unsure of how to respond to a human who had survived what should have been death itself. Marcus did not falter. He continued, every word echoing in the chamber. "Peace is our goal. But know this, we will not be destroyed. We will not be ignored. If your goal is to scare us, know that humans are not afraid of pain. We are not afraid of death. We are afraid only of failing to protect those who cannot protect themselves." For a moment, the chamber was still. The aliens had seen humans as weak, soft, and unimportant. Now they saw something new: resolve, courage, and an unbreakable will. The Craxus shifted in his seat. His plan had failed. The human ambassador was alive, defiant, and proving that even when attacked, humanity would stand. Marcus allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. This was not victory, but it was a warning. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The council chamber was quiet when Marcus Hale returned the next morning. His body still ached from the 7 energy strikes that had almost ended him, but his eyes burned with determination. He moved slowly onto the platform at the center, each step deliberate, a message to every delegate. Humans may bleed, but they do not bow. The room was filled with whispers. Many aliens had never seen a human survive even 1 energy attack, let alone 7. Some watched in fear, some in awe, others with disbelief. The Craxus ambassador, General Vorkath, sat rigid, his claws tapping nervously against the floor. Marcus raised a hand, steadying himself on the edge of the platform. Blood still stained his coat, his shirt torn and charred in places, yet he stood, upright. The council's silence pressed upon him, but he welcomed it. Now words could do more than weapons, they could prove humanity's strength of spirit. "Honored delegates," Marcus began, his voice quiet at first, but growing stronger with each word. "Yesterday I was attacked. 7 times in a room, meant for diplomacy. Every species present could have ended my life in an instant. Yet I am here. I am alive. I am human. And this is what it means to be human." The murmurs rose louder. Some delegates whispered to each other. Some leaned forward, captivated by the courage of the small species before them. Marcus continued, ignoring the pain in his chest, his arms, and legs. Every word was a testament to his survival and defiance. "We are not the largest species, nor the strongest in battle. Our technology is growing, but it is still young compared to yours. What we possess is something older, something deeper than any weapon or armor. We endure. We resist. We rise when others fall. That is our power. That is our strength." The Craxus hissed through his teeth. He had intended to scare humanity, to humiliate them. But instead, Marcus's survival and words had turned the tide. of perception. The other species in the chamber were now watching him not as prey, but as a force to be reckoned with. Marcus's breathing was heavy, his chest ached, and the pain threatened to pull him down, yet he refused to falter. He reached beneath his coat and pressed the small button that activated the nanofiber mesh under his skin. It eased the worst of the pain, stabilized his heart, and allowed him to stand longer than any normal human should. "I do not stand here for revenge," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his arms. "I stand here for peace. I stand here for the innocent lives that cannot defend themselves. I stand for my species not to conquer but to show that even the smallest and newest among you can survive, endure, and demand respect." A wave of silence washed over the chamber. Even the Speaker of the Council hesitated, unsure how to respond to a human who had defied death and now stood, bloody and battered, speaking with clarity and courage. Then, a delegate from the Lyran Collective, a species known for their calm diplomacy, spoke quietly but firmly. "This human, he survived what would have killed many of our own. That is not weakness. That is strength." Others nodded, murmuring in agreement. A subtle shift had begun. The Council had always underestimated humans, but now the balance was changing. Marcus's defiance was more powerful than any display of weapons or intimidation. Vorkath's claws clenched tightly. "Do not be fooled by this display," he growled. "Humans are fragile. They bleed. They suffer. They can still be destroyed." Marcus's eyes met Vorkath's. The pain in his body was sharp, but his will was sharper. "You see our flesh and blood," he said, voice rising. "You see our vulnerability, but you do not see our spirit. You do not see the fire that drives us to stand when others fall. You cannot measure humanity's strength by weapons or numbers alone. We are not fragile. We are unstoppable." The chamber was now completely silent. Aliens who had once laughed at humans were now leaning forward, watching in awe. Even Vorkath could not mask his unease. Marcus paused, taking a steadying breath. He could feel the Council's attention, the shifting respect, and even the fear in some of the delegates. His mission was not only to defend humanity, but to prove that humans were not a species to be ignored or dismissed. "I have been shot 7 times, he continued, his voice steady despite the pain. "I have been told that I should die, yet here I stand. If this is how you test a human, then understand this. Humanity does not bow. Humanity does not break. Humanity survives no matter the cost. And if you threaten my people, you will see this strength multiplied 1,000 times over." Some of the delegates gasped. Never before had a species so openly declared its resilience, its willingness to endure pain, and its refusal to submit. Marcus's words resonated with many who had long admired bravery over raw power. Vorkath hissed again, but Marcus pressed on. "We seek peace, but peace must be mutual. You cannot crush us and expect us to remain silent. You cannot attack us and expect us to disappear. We are human, and we endure. That is our message. That is our strength. That is why you cannot destroy us." Marcus's voice echoed across the chamber. It was not just words, it was defiance, proof that humans were alive in spirit, unbroken even in body. Every delegate felt it. The small, fragile-looking human standing before them had survived the impossible and had turned survival into power. "The Speaker of the Council raised an arm, attempting to regain control. "Human, your words are noted. The Council will deliberate. But be warned, these are serious claims and threats of violence are not taken lightly." Marcus shook his head. "I do not threaten. I only declare the truth. My life is not a threat, but it is proof. Proof that humanity cannot be ignored, cannot be underestimated, and cannot be destroyed easily." The council session ended shortly after, with delegates leaving in quiet discussion. Many whispered about the human who had survived 7 strikes, ripped open a locked door, and spoken with courage that matched the galaxy's oldest warriors. Back in his quarters, Marcus finally allowed himself to collapse on the medical table. Pain still raged through his body, but the adrenaline of the council session had given him strength beyond normal limits. He allowed the medical drones to stabilize him, tend to his burns, and patch the deeper wounds, yet he refused to fully surrender to the pain. He thought of the human colonies, the families who would hear of his survival, and the new respect humanity would earn across the stars. Every injury, every ache, every struggle was a step toward proving that humans were not weak, not fragile, and not to be dismissed. Through the small window in his quarters, Marcus watched the stars stretch across the void. Each one seemed distant, cold, and indifferent. Yet humanity had reached this place. Humanity had survived where most would fall, and Marcus knew in his heart that this was only the beginning. The next day, news spread quietly through the station. The story of Marcus Hale's defiance became a symbol of human courage. Aliens whispered in corridors, some fearful, some respectful, some curious. The Craxus Dominion grew cautious, realizing that their attempt to humiliate humanity had backfired. The human ambassador had survived, and in doing so, had changed the way every species in the chamber perceived humanity. Vorkath, however, did not admit defeat. "This is not over," he hissed to his advisors. "The humans survived. Yes, but survival does not equal victory. We will see if their spirit remains when the full weight of the Dominion falls upon them." Yet even Vorkath could not ignore the message that had spread. Humans endure, humans fight, and humans refuse to break. The galaxy was beginning to notice. The council chamber buzzed with quiet whispers as Ambassador Marcus Hale returned for the third session. The air was thick with tension. The story of the human who had survived 7 energy strikes and torn open a sealed door had spread quickly across the station. Aliens who had once dismissed humans now watched carefully, uncertain how to react to a species that refused to bow. Marcus stepped onto the platform, his body still healing, his coat patched and bloodied, but his gaze steady and unwavering. Every movement carried weight. The smallest shift of his posture sent a message. Humans are not to be underestimated. "Delegates," Marcus began, his voice calm, measured, yet full of power. "Yesterday I endured attacks that should have ended my life. Today I stand to speak not as a victim, but as a representative of humanity's resilience, endurance, and will. We do not seek dominance. We do not seek conquest. We seek peace." Whispers rose in the chamber. Some aliens nodded in agreement. Others leaned forward, curious. The Craxus ambassador, General Vorkath, sat rigid, his claws tapping against the floor, clearly frustrated that his plan to humiliate the human had failed. Marcus continued, each word deliberate, each phrase a carefully measured strike against doubt. "You have seen my body. You have seen the wounds that should have ended me. Yet I remain. You may ask why. The answer is simple. Humans endure. We survive when others would fall. We rise when others would surrender. That is our strength, and it is not measured by size, weaponry, or fleets. It is measured by spirit." Speaker of the council, a glowing being named Valar, raised a hand to quiet the whispers. "Ambassador Hale, your words are noted. The council has witnessed an extraordinary display of resilience. Speak plainly. What do you ask of this council?" Marcus straightened, the pain in his chest flaring, but he ignored it. "I ask that the council recognize humanity's right to exist peacefully, to defend our colonies, and to negotiate disputes without fear of extermination. My survival yesterday proves that humanity cannot be intimidated, nor can we be dismissed." A Lyran delegate, a tall, elegant being with translucent wings, leaned forward. "Your species shows remarkable courage. It is rare to see such willpower, displayed so openly. Perhaps the council has judged humans too quickly." Marcus nodded slightly. "It is not courage alone that defines us. It is determination. It is endurance. When our bodies fail, our minds and spirit continue. That is why humanity has survived countless hardships, from our homeworld to the colonies on distant planets. And that is why humanity will continue to survive whatever challenges the galaxy places before us. Vorkath hissed in anger, stepping forward. Words do not shield you, human. Your people are fragile. You have survived by luck and by your own stubbornness. That does not make you strong. That only makes you foolish. Marcus's eyes locked onto Vorkath's, burning with intensity. Foolish? Perhaps. But even the foolish can endure. Even the underestimated can rise. Even the weak can be unstoppable when they refuse to surrender. That is what humanity has proven and will continue to prove. The chamber fell into silence. Aliens who had once scoffed at humans now exchanged uneasy glances. Many species, accustomed to judging strength by size or weaponry, were seeing a new kind of power, one that came from will, resilience, and an unbreakable spirit. Marcus pressed on, knowing that words alone would not win this council, but that words could change perception. The Kraxus Dominion has tried to intimidate us. They have tried to show their power, but their attacks have not defeated us. They have revealed something far greater. Humanity's strength lies not in weapons or fear, but in our refusal to give up. And that is a lesson every species in this council must learn. A murmur of agreement spread across the chamber. Delegates whispered to one another, nodding in approval. Some species had always admired courage and endurance, even if they had never seen it displayed in such a shocking way. Marcus's defiance was beginning to shift the balance of perception in the council. Vorkath's eyes narrowed. You speak of lessons and strength, he hissed. But strength is measured in action, not words. Humans are small. You can be destroyed. Marcus took a slow, deliberate breath. Pain stabbed through his chest, but he did not falter. He stepped closer to the edge of the platform, leaning forward slightly. Action, he said softly, yet every word carried weight. I have acted. I have survived attacks that should have ended me. I have torn open sealed doors with my own hands. I have faced the impossible and still stood. Is that not action enough? The chamber went silent. The murmurs of doubt had turned to murmurs of respect. Even the Speaker of the Council looked thoughtful, reconsidering the assumptions he had made about humanity. Marcus's words now carried a subtle threat, not of violence, but of inevitability. You may try to destroy us. You may attack us again. But humanity endures. We rise when others fall. You cannot intimidate a species that refuses to be intimidated. You cannot destroy a spirit that refuses to break. And that is why humanity deserves a place in this council. Not because we are the largest or strongest, but because we will never stop, and we will never yield. The council hall seemed to shift. Aliens who had once considered humans weak now regarded them with a mixture of awe and caution. Some whispered to one another, repeating Marcus's words. Others leaned back, uncertain how to proceed. Vorkath's claws scraped the floor as he realized that his plan had failed. This is not over, he hissed, though his voice lacked the certainty it had carried before. We will see if their defiance lasts when true pressure is applied. Marcus did not respond. He straightened, raising his hands slightly in a gesture of calm and control. I seek no war, he said. I seek only recognition, understanding, and peace. But know this: humanity will survive, humanity will endure, and humanity will rise, no matter the cost. The Speaker of the Council, Valar, finally spoke, his glowing arms raising to quiet the chamber. The Council acknowledges the extraordinary display of resilience and defiance by the human ambassador. The Kraxus Dominion's actions have been noted, and the Council will consider the implications carefully. This session is adjourned. As the delegates filed out, many looked back at Marcus with newfound respect. Some whispered to one another about the small human who had survived impossible odds. Some even took note of the subtle courage that seemed to radiate from him. Marcus's defiance had become a symbol, a turning point not only for the Council but for humanity's reputation in the galaxy. Back in his quarters, Marcus allowed himself a moment of relief. His body throbbed with pain, but his mind was clear. He had made an impact. He had proven that humans were not weak, that their strength was not measured in size or firepower, but in spirit, endurance, and willpower. He thought of the colonies, of families who would hear the story of the human ambassador, who had survived 7 attacks and torn open sealed doors. He thought of the whispers of respect and fear that were now spreading among the alien species. Humanity was no longer invisible. Humanity was no longer weak. Humanity was seen and feared in ways that words alone could not have achieved. Marcus knew that the Craxus would not give up. They would plan, they would attack, and they would try again. But humanity had already changed the equation. Humans were not just survivors. They were defiant, unstoppable, and capable of facing the impossible. The next steps would be dangerous, but Marcus welcomed the challenge. He had already faced death and emerged stronger. He had already proven that humanity's spirit could not be crushed. The galaxy would learn sooner or later that humans were not fragile. They were formidable. And with that thought, Marcus looked out at the stars once more. The void beyond the station seemed less intimidating now. Humanity had arrived, and no attack, no threat, and no doubt could erase their presence. They had endured, and they would continue to endure, until the galaxy finally understood what it meant to face a human spirit. The council chamber was more crowded than it had ever been. Word had spread quickly about Ambassador Marcus Hale's defiance, the human who had survived 7 energy strikes and torn open a sealed door. Many species came to witness the final session. Some curious, some cautious, and some openly fearful. The Craxus Dominion had not yet abandoned their arrogance, but their confidence had been shaken. Marcus stepped onto the platform, his body still battered, but his spirit stronger than ever. His coat was patched, his shirt torn and blood-stained, but his eyes burned with clarity and determination. Every step he took seemed to challenge the assumptions of every species present. Humans were not weak. Humans were not fragile. Humans were unstoppable when they refused to break. Honored delegates, Marcus began, his voice steady, carrying through the chamber. We have seen much in these sessions. I have been attacked, my life threatened, and yet I stand here today. Humanity does not seek conflict, we seek peace, but peace cannot exist without understanding. Peace cannot exist where one side is ignored, dismissed, or crushed under the weight of another's arrogance. The Craxus ambassador, General Vorkath, sat rigid, his claws tapping nervously against the floor. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. His plans to humiliate humanity had failed, and now the galaxy watched humans with a mix of respect and caution. Marcus continued, each word deliberate, each phrase carrying the weight of countless human generations who had endured hardships beyond measure. We are small in size and our fleets are young, but what we have is older, stronger, and deeper than any weapon, the will to endure. We rise when others fall. We continue when others surrender. We face impossible odds and refuse to yield. That is humanity. That is our strength. And that is why humanity must be recognized, respected, and allowed to coexist peacefully in this galaxy. Whispers spread across the chamber. Delegates from species long accustomed to judging strength by size or firepower now exchanged uncertain glances. Humans were different. Humans were dangerous not because of raw power but because of their spirit, their courage, and their refusal to be broken. The Speaker of the Council, Valar, raised his arms to call for order. Ambassador Hale, your words have been heard. The Council recognizes the extraordinary display of resilience and courage. The Craxus Dominion's actions are under scrutiny, and deliberations will begin immediately. Marcus nodded slightly. He knew the Council's formal deliberations were only part of the process. His goal was to shift perception, to ensure that humans were no longer dismissed as fragile newcomers, and he had succeeded. As the delegates began their discussions, Marcus allowed himself a moment to lean against the platform. Pain still radiated from his chest, arms, and back, but it was secondary to the sense of accomplishment that surged through him. Humanity's reputation had changed. Aliens who had once seen humans as weak now understood that they could endure, survive, and even inspire fear and respect. The Craxus ambassador rose, his voice sharper than usual. This council may discuss peace, but do not misunderstand, human. Survival does not equal victory. Your species is small, and the Dominion will not be easily dismissed. Marcus met his gaze, his voice calm but resolute. I do not claim victory, today. I only claim truth. Humanity cannot be ignored, cannot be destroyed, and cannot be underestimated. We endure, we rise, and we protect what is ours. That is our power, and that is our legacy. The council deliberated for hours, discussing borders, treaties, and mutual responsibilities. But Marcus had already achieved something far greater than any treaty. He had proven that humans were a force that could not be crushed. The Craxus Dominion, once confident and arrogant, now approached negotiations with caution, aware that underestimating humanity could bring consequences they had never imagined. At last, the council reconvened to announce its decision. The speaker, Valar, spoke with measured authority. The council recognizes the need for peace and the right of humanity to defend its colonies. The Craxus Dominion is ordered to cease aggressive actions and engage in monitored negotiations. Any further acts of violence will be met with consequences determined by the full council. Let this be a warning. No species, regardless of size or history, may disregard another's resilience or spirit. Marcus allowed himself a small, quiet nod. The formal victory was not total. There was still much work to be done, but the most important message had been sent. Humanity would no longer be dismissed. Humanity had survived the impossible and had turned endurance into power. Outside the council chamber, whispers of Marcus Hale's defiance continued to ripple through the station. Delegates from distant star systems spoke quietly of the human, who had survived 7 attacks and ripped open a sealed door with his bare hands. The story spread, carried by those who had witnessed it firsthand and by others who had heard the tale secondhand. Across the galaxy, humans were beginning to earn a reputation that no one could ignore. In his quarters, Marcus finally allowed himself to rest. Medical drones hovered nearby, tending to the worst of his wounds, stabilizing his breathing and patching burns. Pain still pulsed through him, but it was secondary to the quiet satisfaction that settled in his mind. Humanity had made its mark. Humanity had shown that it was more than fragile skin and blood. It was spirit, willpower, and an unbreakable determination to survive and protect. He thought of New Carthage, of the families who had relied on him, and of Earth, a small blue world that had produced beings capable of facing the impossible and standing tall. Marcus understood that his personal survival was only the beginning. The real victory was the lesson that humanity had shown the galaxy. Outside, the station shimmered with lights and the stars stretched endlessly beyond. Marcus gazed at them, knowing that humanity had arrived and that it would not be ignored. Aliens would remember this day. They would remember the human who was shot 7 times and still stood. They would remember that strength was not always measured by claws, scales, or weapons, but by endurance, spirit, and the refusal to yield. In the weeks that followed, Marcus's story became legend. Across the stations and colonies, humans were seen differently. Some species who had once scoffed at Earth's children now treated them with cautious respect. Others began to study human resilience, wondering what made a species capable of surviving the impossible and continuing to rise. Even the Craxus Dominion, though still wary, began to negotiate with caution, aware that any attempt to humiliate or attack humanity again could lead to consequences they could not predict. Marcus, meanwhile, returned to his people. He was greeted with cheers, awe, and gratitude. Families who had feared for their lives now looked at him not just as a diplomat, but as a symbol of human endurance. He had survived, he had spoken, and he had changed the galaxy's perception of his species forever. He allowed himself a quiet smile as he stood among the humans of New Carthage. The wounds from the attacks still pained him, but each scar was a reminder of the strength he carried not just for himself but for all humanity. His story would inspire generations, a testament that even the smallest species could face the impossible and emerge stronger than before. Marcus looked to the sky, imagining distant stars, distant worlds, and distant civilizations. Humanity had arrived among them, and the galaxy would remember. No one would ever again underestimate humans. They had survived the impossible, defied expectation, and proved that endurance, spirit, and courage could change the course of history. And so, the story of Marcus Hale, the human ambassador who was shot 7 times, ripped open a sealed door, and refused to fall, became a legend. It was told and retold in councils and training halls, and in the quiet moments of alien children who learned that even the smallest species could endure, could fight, and could rise against impossible odds. Humanity had left its mark, not through war or conquest, but through courage, resilience, and the unyielding human spirit. The galaxy had seen humanity, and it would never forget.